Ooh, oh. Forgot that I was wearing lipstick. Nice. I'm feeling very like The Craft today. But honestly, what is my brand if not 90s witchy vibes? Also, these bangs are cute, but like, I struggle with them. Just let me have my Dwight moment today. I hope that's not distracting. So in today's video, I'm gonna cover everything that I watched in January. We have a very mixed bag of movies and some shows that we're gonna cover today. And a lot of them are brand new releases, so I hope that you do stick around. I'm sorry that I didn't do one of these for December, but I've just been a very busy girl lately. And also because I've been very busy, this video, along with my last few ones, have not been scripted, which is really nice for me because it's like a lot less work off camera. But lately, especially, I've just been working a lot, so thank you guys for bearing with me. I know I didn't upload many videos in January, but this month is exciting. I started with my collection update. We have this video. We are gonna have my Bloody Valentine original verse remake. We're gonna have my Texas Chainsaw Massacre review. So I hope that you stick around and subscribe if you haven't already. My patrons are also getting some bonus content soon, so that's linked down below if you're interested. But anyways, let's just jump into everything that I've watched. Now, to be honest, I did watch a ton of Marvel movies this past month. I'm not gonna go over any of those. I watched like 53 movies and TV shows in January somehow. I don't ask, but 16 of them are Marvel movies, so I'm not gonna be talking about those today. I think when I go back home and visit my parents in February, we're gonna finish our kind of Marvel marathon, and then I'll probably do a ranking of the whole MCU. I also watched a lot of 80s movies. I watched a total of 18 movies that are from the 80s. I am unfortunately not going to talk about those today either. As I'm sure my subs know, I've been prepping to make my top 10 horror movies of the 1980s video, and I really want to make sure that I'm doing my homework and watching as many of those movies as possible. I kind of have a feeling that that video might not come until March, just because we have other very important videos that I got to get done this month. So, to get those disclaimers out of the way, let's just start with the Matrix franchise. I watched the third and fourth movies in January because the newest one, The Matrix Resurrections, was released in 2021. I'm not really that big on The Matrix. I really liked the original movie when I was younger, and I still gave it 4 stars, but the rest of the franchise just didn't really feel worth the time. I actually ended up liking the newest one the most. I didn't like the sequel very much, but it was tolerable. It was a 2.5 star. The third movie is insufferable. It is so loud for so long. Like, that movie is just exhausting. I swear it's just like 45 minutes straight of humans fighting these like flying robot things. Not my cup of tea. Oh. Stupid. So I honestly don't really recommend that franchise. The whole thing is extraordinarily messy. So up next, we have the Harry Potter 20th Anniversary Return to Hogwarts. I gave this a perfect score and a heart because it had me in tears. The Harry Potter franchise basically raised me, and this 20th anniversary special was like really, really sweet. It was just so good to be back on those sets, back with the same actors and having them reflect on, you know, everything they experienced. Love that they didn't invite J.K. Rowling, but they did include a couple like jump scare moments where they had these old interviews from 2019 that they put in with her. That was actually from the Warner Bros. Studio tour in London. That was when they originally filmed those clips. So it definitely didn't feel quite relevant that she was there. I think that they were just in an awkward spot where it's like this was her brainchild. Like, this is her universe. So to fully exclude her, I guess, you know, that's a tough thing. Like, I guess you couldn't really do that. I mean, I personally would have, but I think that was there to maybe appease the people who just are living under a rock and have no idea what's going on with her like loud transphobia and whatever, so that those people wouldn't then ask like, oh, where was J.K. Rowling, and then do their own research and whatever and find out what was going on. I don't really know, but the only reason why I kind of liked those weird jump scare interviews that they had with her is because it made it seem like she was dead, because those interviews were dated from 2019, like they had the text on the screen. So that was like a fun little fantasy moment. I don't know if I would give it a perfect score upon a rewatch, just because there are so many other topics I wish that they got into. I know that they probably couldn't have afforded all of these actors for like an 8-part series or something like that, but I feel like that's what a 20-year retrospective would have deserved for this franchise, because there are just so many facets of it. Like, I would want an entire episode dedicated just to the special and practical effects. I'd want a whole episode maybe dedicated to the fandom, a whole episode dedicated just to the main trio, a whole episode dedicated just to creating all the the sets of Hogwarts or all the sets in general. There was just a lot that I feel like we were kind of missing out on, although I do know that all those special features exist already, probably on like the Harry Potter Blu-rays and stuff. I do own quite a bit of those. So whatever, I was rating it with my emotions, which I don't typically do, but yeah, that was a perfect moment for me. Nostalgia's a hell of a drug. Okay, up next, we rewatched Monsters, Inc. from 2001. This was one of my absolute favorite movies of all time growing up. I'm so sad that I never owned it. I think I do have it on Blu-ray now though. But there's not much to say here. It's also not horror, so I don't want to dwell. But I said I'd give it 6 stars if I could. Pixar doesn't come to play. There honestly is a little bit of horror in this. I mean, it's a creature feature, right? There's a bunch of monsters who are all the characters. Randall? Ooh, Randall is so freaky. He still gives me the creeps, and when I was younger, I was pretty scared of him. So we got some little horror vibes there. Oh, yes. Okay, I also rewatched the entire Scream franchise and the new Scream twice, but all my opinions on that already exist on my channel. I did an entire Scream franchise series. I reviewed every single movie. I reacted to all of your comments from that series. I made a Scream 5 predictions video. I reacted to my Scream 5 predictions video. So there's a whole lot of Scream content on my channel. Not gonna talk about that franchise here. Up next would be a movie called The Call that came out in 2020. This is a South Korean horror thriller and it's on Netflix right now if you're in the States. Connected by a phone in the same home but 20 years apart, a serial killer puts another woman's past and life on the line to change her own fate. This movie was a crazy wild ride. It was a trip. The acting in it is so stellar. Like these leading women just blew my mind. Also, it's such a crazy concept. I don't know if this is like a remake or something or if it's adapted from a book, but I had never heard of this concept before. This is a brand new thing for me, and I thought that they handled it extraordinarily well. This story took turns I honestly never expected, although on that note, there might be just a few too many crazy turns that the story takes, especially in the very end. That's why this is a 4-star movie for me, because I probably would have rated it higher, but the ending just gets really messy, and they could have had a very clean ending had they not done that. But yeah, I highly recommend this one. This was a very interesting, good time. So getting into another new release would be The King's Man. This came out in 2021 though. As a collection of history's worst tyrants and criminal masterminds gather to plot a war to wipe out millions, one man must race against time to stop them. That's kind of misleading. It's not just one man, like he has a whole team, but that's whatever. I give this movie 2.5 stars. It was a mess. I said the Kingsman franchise is in shambles because what? The first 2 acts are a chore to get through. The 3rd act is the only reason I would rewatch it. That is completely factual. The first 2 acts, I mean, I enjoyed that they were pretty historically accurate. They definitely took some liberties, and I have to spoil one of them just because if I can save your eyes from having to witness this, then I will. So hopefully we all know the historical figure of Rasputin. In this movie, he is played up as this insanely sexually charged, weird, dancing, mystical guy. To be honest, I don't know too much about his real life personality, but there's a scene that our main character shares with Rasputin in this movie, and at one point, I shit you not, I wish that I was lying, Rasputin starts to tongue fuck an old bullet wound on his leg. Let's just sit with that for a second. I promise that doesn't spoil the plot in any way. I am fairly certain that was meant to be played up as comedy. It just made me want to throw up. Like, the Kingsman franchise is so great because they're gentleman spy movies, but they don't take themselves as seriously as 007 or something like that. The cinematography is amazing. The fight sequences are just like some of the most fun that I've ever really had in a theater or even just rewatching them at home. The King's Man had none of that going on. Not until the 3rd act, which is where you get more of those classic Kingsman vibes. The first 2 acts of the movie are so weird. It's like just watching kind of a more traditional war movie, except there's really out of place, unfunny moments of comedy. So I gave it 2.5 stars just because the 3rd act was pretty good, but it was a very mediocre movie. My dad actually liked it more than I did. Also, imagine how tired we are. I had to watch that tongue fucking scene sitting next to my dad in the theater. Talk about trauma for me and my dad. Anyways, let's move on. Up next, I watched The House. This was just released to Netflix. Across different eras, a poor family, an anxious developer, and a fed-up landlady become tied to the same mysterious house in this animated dark comedy. This was also unfortunately a 2.5-star movie for me, although everybody else seems to really like this one. I was really let down because if you have been around, you know that stop motion animation is one of my favorite subgenres of film, especially with horror. So I was really excited that we were getting a dark comedy, which is also one of my favorite subgenres of horror, and it was gonna be stop motion animation, okay? I love that for me. So imagine my disappointment when this movie is, one, not funny, and two, I think number one is probably because it was just very, very flat and dry. I didn't really feel any emotion from this movie, which is something that's important to me in literally any movie-going experience. I want to feel something. That's why I watch movies, you know, escapism, good vibes. I also let it be known on Letterboxd, in the first story, the characters look so dumb, I literally couldn't pay an ounce of attention to the plot. Yeah, that's on me, like that's my bad, but I can't stop that from being true. Like, look at them. Why is their face like, you know? There is one moment in particular that I think might have made me chuckle, or maybe I just like let a puff of air out my nose like, but I didn't like it. No. Luckily, I did like the next movie that I watched, but that would be kind of an obscure one, Best in Show from 2000. One of my coworkers recommended this movie to me, and okay, just listen. The tension is palpable, the excitement is mounting, and the heady scent of competition is in the air as hundreds of eager contestants from across America prepare to take part in what is undoubtedly one of the greatest events of their lives, the Mayflower Dog Show. I cannot. So this is a mockumentary, and listen to all the people that are in this. Parker Posey, our favorite girl from Scream 3, Catherine O'Hara, come through Home Alone Queen, Eugene Levy, Will Sasso, Christopher Guest, Jennifer Coolidge, and Jane Lynch. They play lovers in this movie, actually, and more. Okay, there are many, several celebrities in this movie. But back then in 2000, I feel like a lot of them were definitely up and coming. So we're just absolutely blessed to have gotten all of them in one movie at some point in history. And this movie, if I had to describe it, is basically The Office before The Office. The mockumentary style was so similar to The Office. I'm like, okay, I see that inspiration. I gave it 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. Moving on to another 2021 release, that will be Don't Look Up. 2 low-level astronomers, upon discovering that a meteor will strike the Earth in 6 months, go on a media tour to try to warn the world, but find an unreceptive and unbelieving populace. Oh, I didn't like this movie either. This one I also gave 2.5 stars. Weird that like every new release that I watched within that week, I gave 2.5 stars. So 2 things can be true with this movie. I agree with the messaging. It is extremely frustrating to live in a world that is just slowly boiling to death and have most people just like not care and not do anything to change their lifestyles, and have a government full of geriatric assholes that like don't really care because they want that money from those sweet oil companies. Shout out to my state of California though, they just passed a new composting law. Supposedly this new law is supposed to prevent a lot of methane from entering our atmosphere, which is one of the most problematic greenhouse gases. We hate her. And it'll be the equivalent of removing a year's worth of 1 million gas-powered cars from the road. That's so much, like that. Okay, sorry, just had to plug that and just generally remind people that it's important to vote for politicians that actually care about this shit and will get this done. So anyways, I agree with the messaging of Don't Look Up, but it is a bad movie. The messaging is really heavy-handed. It's a very obvious allegory for, you know, climate change, or even the pandemic, or like basically any other giant worldwide issue. It's extremely heavy-handed, and it makes this an incredibly unenjoyable movie for me because it stresses me the fuck out. I've said many times on my channel, I won't watch a lot of extreme horror and stuff because I never watch a movie wanting to have a bad time, and this movie gave me a very bad time. It's not funny. The funniest part about this movie is definitely Timothée Chalamet. He plays kind of the antithesis of his real life personality. He plays this unkempt, laid-back skater boy type, so love that for him. He had the funniest dialogue of the entire movie. Oh, I fucking love fingerling potatoes. And like the acting was fine, you know, we have a bunch of Oscar-worthy actors in there. I think that they were kind of all criminally underused though, except for Jonah Hill, but he was kind of playing a character that he would always play. And Meryl Streep did a really good job at playing an antagonist politician type, but all the negatives far outweigh the positives. Another example would definitely be the editing. I think it was Kirsten Runquist that pointed out that this movie feels like it was a rough cut, like they just threw all the footage together and roughly cut it up and they were like, you know, that's probably good enough. There are so many scenes where people get cut off in the middle of their dialogue, and I guess that's a choice. One that I don't really see the purpose of, and they would also cut to a lot of stock footage of like bees and polar bears. Could you imagine if I was kind of in the middle of acting an important scene and then they just cut off my dialogue? It's weird, it's jarring. I think that it's actually meant to make us empathize more with the creatures of Earth and kind of get us out of our own bubble and realize, you know, there are creatures that deserve this Earth too and deserve to thrive and have good environments to live in. So I think I understand the intention, but in terms of editing, it's so weird. Anyway, that's also not horror, so I should stop rambling. I apologize. If you're new here, this is a horror channel, if that wasn't clear. So the next movie is a horror movie. Luckily, that would be Antlers, also from 2021. A young teacher discovers that her troubled student's father and younger brother harbor a deadly supernatural secret. Taking the boy into her care, the teacher must fight for their survival against horrors beyond imagination. 1 star. It's a bad movie. I'm sorry. I wish that I liked more movies that I watched this month. I mean, well, I actually did. Like, I love a lot of the Marvel movies. I really liked a lot of the 80s movies, but I can't talk about those yet. On Letterboxd, I said the girlies want to be like Ari Aster so bad, and let me explain. Can you think of a horror movie where the real horror was just grief all along? Yeah, so that's what this movie is trying to do, but it only scrapes it at a very surface level. It's a very shallow movie. Oh my god, anything but that right now, please. I just feel like if you're gonna make a movie like that again so soon after we've gotten all these really heavy, you know, elevated horror type of movies in the past like 5 years, do it better, do something different, give me characters that I'll actually care about. The movie is just really flat. It's drab. It's a boring time. The only points I would give it is that Kerry Russell is an amazing actress. Put her in better movies, please. If you haven't seen her in Dark Skies, I talk about that movie every chance that I get, loves. You should watch that. Don't watch this one. And then the creature is cool, I guess. I don't know. I feel like I've seen something like it before, either in The Ritual or what was that one really weird movie? It was a period piece on Netflix. It stars the guy from Twilight. When a thorn bush turns white, that's when I come home. Michael Sheen. Apostle. That's what I was thinking of. Why did I start talking about? Oh, because of the monster. So yeah, it kind of reminds me of that type of vibe. Just everything about that movie I feel like has been done. On Letterboxd, I also almost said Insidious called. They want their plot devices back because you have this little boy and he's drawing scary pictures, and those are kind of used as horror elements or suspense elements, and they kind of serve to explain the plot a little bit better. And I'm like, okay, that's Insidious, girl. So I was unfortunately just very bored by Antlers. That's one you can definitely skip. Up next would be one of the best things that I have seen in a very long time, Another Round. This is a Danish movie that came out in 2020. 4 high school teachers launch a drinking experiment, upholding a constant low level of intoxication. 5 full stars, a heart. Oh, this movie was so good. So the movie has themes that are perhaps a little bit obvious. You know, it has to do with drinking, so it's kind of about like midlife crises, substance abuse, that kind of a thing. But it also somehow remains incredibly lighthearted. You know, things are going very well until they inevitably aren't going so well. This isn't a spoiler. I feel like these are things you can gather just based on the subject matter alone. It's really hard to explain because despite that subject matter, it left me feeling so immeasurably happy and joyful, because not only does it deal with those themes, but it also does kind of deal with themes of friendship and how important that is. And also just basking in the joy of life. We all kind of get stuck in these routines, especially people that work 9 to 5s like teachers, and they're burdened with a very difficult job. So while these men are really enjoying their drinking experiment, they're like, wow, there's really something to this. Being constantly drunk is like totally changing my personality, and all these friends are getting together and they're like talking about all the results and like what's going on with them. But the real value and why their lives are getting better is because they're spending time with their friends. They're tending to their relationships, and yeah, the alcohol is making them more outgoing, but it's just the very fact that they are getting out there more. So I thought it was such a lovely message, and Mads Mikkelsen, oh my god, he deserves the world. And luckily this movie was nominated for Best International Film. I think it won, and it was also nominated for Best Director. I personally think that doctors should prescribe this movie. Anyways, moving on now to a 90s movie, The Faculty. I finally watched this one. fun. When some very creepy things start happening around school, the kids at Harrington High make a chilling discovery that confirms their worst suspicions. Their teachers are really from another planet. This movie is like The Thing meets Invasion of the Body Snatchers meets Scream. Wonderful late 90s high school teen kind of vibes in this one. It's so cheesy and corny. I had such a blast with it. I gave it 3.5 stars, but I still gave it a heart because despite it like not being a super strong movie, it's so much fun and I would rewatch this in a heartbeat. It also has some really big stars in it. It's a good time. Oh my god, also Usher is in this movie. He popped up like a jump scare. I'm not gonna lie, I was not ready for him. But yeah, he's there doing his best to give an Oscar-worthy performance. I do want to say more about it, but I think this one is definitely gonna make my top 10 list when I move on to the 90s. So obviously I should wait until I do like my 90s live stream, wait till I do my top 10 of the 90s video, and I'll talk about that movie a lot more. Up next is a movie that I will probably talk about for a long time, so brace yourselves. That would be Satanic Panic from 2019. A pizza delivery girl is suddenly in for the fight of her young life when encountering a group of Satanists in need of a virgin to ritually sacrifice. So this one I gave 2.5 stars, but it's such a loaded movie. I have so much to say because this movie was everything that I loved, but it was also everything that I hated. So I had such a hard time ranking this one, and I just settled on ranking it at a solid 2.5 stars. Okay, my favorite things about the movie. Number 1, this woman. Number 2, this woman. Number 3, this woman. Ruby Modine in particular. This girl stars in the Happy Death Day movies if you haven't seen those yet. She was by far my favorite part about this movie. When she came in like the second act, she saved it for me. The first act is atrocious. The third act is also atrocious. The second act, where we have Ruby just acting her ass off for this weird low budget cringy movie, is mwah. She's fantastic, and the other leads are great as well. For some reason, even though this was one of the weirdest, wackiest movies I've ever seen, these women were giving it their all. It's just a tough one. I was kind of close to turning it off within the first 20-ish minutes of it, but then who shows up? None other than Jerry O'Connell from Scream 2. Here's the thing though, because I both loved and hated his character so much. On the one hand, he's hilarious, but on the other hand, you should probably look up some trigger warnings for the things he tries to do. Another positive about the movie is that the gore is super intense and it's really well done and it's all practical. There's also a lot of other body horror going on, so that's a lot of fun if you like that kind of thing. But this is one that the only reason why I would recommend it is because I just need somebody to talk to about it. I'm feeling very alone in my experience right now, and it's so batshit. Literally on Letterboxd, what did I say? I just said, this was batshit. There's not really a good way to describe this movie. I feel like I could talk and just nothing would prepare you for it. I honestly think most of you guys would hate it, but there are quite a few redeeming qualities to it. So I don't know if it's worth your time. That's unfortunately something that you're gonna have to find out if you want to experiment and sit down and watch this movie. But look up trigger warnings. If you don't like movies that feel like a bad trip, also maybe don't watch this movie. But yeah, I do think that I'll rewatch that one. That one, like, there's a lot about it that I don't like, but I still think it would be a guilty pleasure. I don't know. I'm glad I finally watched it, but also like I'm wrestling with a lot of emotions. So let's move on. Up next, I rewatched Halloween Kills. Probably don't need to read the synopsis for this one. I actually did watch the extended cut though with the alternate ending, which was fun because I got it on Blu-ray. If you haven't seen my TikTok or if you haven't seen my collection update yet, I now own the extended cut of Halloween Kills and just couldn't be happier. I was worried that on a rewatch I wouldn't like the movie as much because when I left the theater, I was absolutely jazzed. I love that movie so much. I gave it a glowing review, a 30-minute long review, mind you, if you want to watch that. And I was really worried that because all the hype has died down and because I'd seen it before and I would know what would happen, I wouldn't like it as much. But I pretty much loved it just as much. I just didn't have quite as much excitement, and so there were a couple things that I wasn't as forgiving of. So it went from a 4.5 star movie to a 4-star movie for me, but still absolutely loved it. But yeah, I've given that movie a very intense breakdown already, so let's move on. The last thing that I watched in the month of January would be The Woman in the House Across the Street from the Girl in the Window. For Anna, every day is the same. She sits sits with her wine, staring out the window, watching life go by without her. But when a handsome neighbor moves in across the street, Anna starts to see a light at the end of the tunnel. That is until she witnesses a gruesome murder. Or did she? So this show is pretty bad. I still gave it 3 stars though, just because there is a lot about the show that I think is very competent. For example, each episode is less than a half hour long and there's only 8 episodes, so I said on Letterboxd I think it's worth the quick binge. I watched it in 2 days, but you could easily watch it in a single evening. I thought the story was fun, the twist reveal I thought was kind of funny, it was something unique that I hadn't seen before, and it kept me hooked. I think the really quick pacing of it definitely helped a lot. The first episode and the second episode I was not sold on, like the ending of the very first episode kind of has a tone shift and I was like, oh shoot, okay, maybe I will watch this whole show, because I wasn't planning on it for most of the first episode, but just power through that. Trust me though, I would not recommend this if it was not as short as it is. If they were hour-long episodes, absolutely not, and I will tell you why. So this is supposed to be a parody on The Woman in the Window, I guess, but the problem is that it's not funny at all because the writing does not commit to being a parody. A lot of it still feels incredibly serious. A lot of moments I'm not sure if I'm supposed to be laughing. A lot of moments I know I'm supposed to be laughing, but it's painfully unfunny. So the tone of the show is super, super strange. But I personally ended up caring about Kristen Bell's character and a couple other characters of the show. I felt really invested in the story and I liked the twist reveal. So it's not a good show, but I think it has entertainment value and it's worth watching. That's gonna do it though for the month of January. Maybe I'll end this video talking about some of the things I'm most excited to watch in February. I'm really excited to dive into the My Bloody Valentine original and remake. I've never seen either of them before, and really the only other Valentine's Day horror movie I'd seen is Valentine from 2000, which I did review last year for Valentine's Day. Love that movie. And I'm also getting pretty excited for the new Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie. I wasn't excited at all before, but I know that it's in no way ever gonna live up to my other favorite movies of that franchise, so I'm just gonna try to enjoy whatever we get. I also have quite a few more 80s movies that I need to watch that you guys recommended during my live stream last weekend. Basket Case is one that I'm particularly excited to watch. There's a movie that I think was just recently added to Netflix. It's called Level 16. That one came out in 2018, has a pretty good cast, really interesting concept. Oh, I'm definitely gonna go see Moonfall on Friday when it comes out. Oh, that reminds me, I need to go get my ticket. That movie looks so bad that I think it's gonna be really enjoyable, and I love Halle Berry and Patrick Wilson, so it'll be fun. There's literally hundreds more movies on my watch list, so I don't need to get into all of that, but I do hope you stick around to hear my thoughts on all those movies. I have to shout out all my patrons. Thank you guys so much for supporting me. You guys are getting some extra content very soon. I hope you're looking forward to that. And these are for you. Mwah, 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 mwah. If you'd like that special little send-off at the end of every single video, you can sign up for my Patreon linked down below. The bonus content is nice too. But other than that, I hope that you're as excited as I am for all my upcoming content. Oh, I'm also so excited to go to CreepyCon this weekend. Lots of things to look forward to this month. So I hope you're as excited for this month as I am. Stay groovy, stay witchy, and I hope I'll catch you in the next one. Bye!